You will hear people say tariffs. It is approximately 0%. And I'll go on record and I'll debate that with anybody. It's 0% due to tariffs.
The Liberals got absolutely roasted over the last 24 hours by conservatives, by the parliamentary budget officer they're trying to fire, unions, and of course by reality itself. It's funny how the mainstream media never really talks about this stuff. It might be a headline in passing, and then immediately it's like, oh, coming to you live now. What's Donald Trump doing? Pierre Poilievre? Yes, Pierre Poilievre is exactly like Donald Trump. That's all, folks. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video as well. Another mill is closing down, and somehow the Algoma story we touched on yesterday got even darker. Before we get into all of that stuff, though, I have to tell you, I got you an early Christmas gift. I know. How could I? It is the most deranged mainstream media story I've ever seen, quite possibly in my life, and you will not believe who they're targeting with this one.
ABC Democracy.
Oh yes, you cannot make this one up. Feature story today on CTV News. Popular children's entertainer releases new single in response to rise of fascism. This guy, his name is Raffi, and apparently he is known as one of the most influential children's entertainers in the English-speaking world, and he's created and performed music that parents still share with their own children today. One of his biggest hits, known as Baby Beluga, was released in the 1980s. I'll be honest, I was born in the 90s, never heard of this guy before in my life. But at the age of 77, he's lending his voice to a more political theme: democracy. Yeah, he says he wants to highlight the importance of it to his youngest fans. Now, Raffi's new children's song about fascism and democracy got him an exclusive sit-down interview with CTV News chief news anchor and senior editor Omar Sachedina. And he asked him, why did you feel the need to write this piece, ABC Democracy, right now? Raffi says it's just a natural response to these times. And I quote, "We live in a time where south of the border, America, fascism has been on the rise. And it is so in other countries around the world. It's really important for families to have and to be inspired about a citizen's duty to keep democracy alive and strong." It really is just something to me. All of these flag wavers who are always like, fascism, whoa, bro. Why aren't you talking about Pakistan? Why aren't you talking about, Afghanistan, maybe? I don't know, currently under rule by the Taliban. You're not talking about North Korea or anything like that. No, actually, you're dead silent about every single one of those places. Though it is important to note that currently there's actually not a single government that is officially identified as fascist. One of the biggest reasons that makes it so difficult to identify nations in this way is because the word fascist and fascism has been used en masse ever since the Second World War to just describe people who you don't like, who are oftentimes right-leaning, even though traditionally, historically, fascism was a left-leaning political movement. It's a lot to unpack there. It really is. But they changed the definition and now they call everybody who they disagree with fascist. And it is kind of funny to me that, the statistic reality here, and it's the part that they never mention, is let's say the US, as he insinuated, Raffi did in his interview, is actually turning to a fascist regime. Well, if that were true, why on earth is the US still currently the #1 destination for immigration? Why does the US consistently rank higher than Canada on global institutional reliance metrics? Why do polls consistently show that Americans trust their democratic institutions more than Canadians trust ours? And also, why are democratic participation rates rising in the United States of America? Why also do more minorities hold elected office roles than at any point in U.S. history today? None of that makes sense. So if America is truly descending into authoritarianism, they're doing a terrible job at it. Meanwhile, in Canada, we had, Ottawa invoking the Emergencies Act on peaceful protesters. which was then ruled unconstitutional. We have federal agencies censoring our news under Bill C-11, C-18, all in order to protect our national identity, which, for the record, nationalism is actually a characteristic of fascism, and we seem dead set on making sure that people know what it means to be Canadian, and that is that we're not American. Alrighty then. Also, it's kind of weird that we have like Bill C-9 in Parliament right now about religious expression being hate speech.
This is an important day in the future of this legislation. The Justice Committee will be looking at the specific clauses of this bill after question period today, and Canadians will come to understand which parties are interested in protecting communities against hate and which are more interested in obstructing and delaying this legislation.
And arguably, politically conditioning children to assume that you're not in a fascist country, but actually one of the freest nations on earth is a fascist country, is a pretty fascist thing to do. It's actually historically incredibly common that the earliest signs of authoritarianism or fascist movements is using children as political vessels. Why? Because children don't challenge the narrative. They have no idea what's going on. They don't know what any of this means. Raffi even says in his interview, kids like this song because they recognize the letters ABC. What Raffi is actually doing and being celebrated for by our mainstream media is actually classic, well-documented, soft authoritarian propaganda structure. Could you imagine if a conservative entertainer released a song called ABC, Freedom from Socialism? The media would call that indoctrination. They'd call it radicalization, extremism, misinformation, conspiracy theories, dangerous, unacceptable. But because the message aligns with the dominant ideological class, especially here in Canada, it's inspiring, it's wholesome, it's educational. And you know, one radical far left children's song wouldn't be that concerning on its own because people are wacky. But when you place it inside the larger trend that we witness here in this country, it's deeply concerning. It really is. I mean, take Bill C-9 as an example.
Is that they intend to criminalize religious belief. So the Liberals introduced a bill a few months ago. It's called Bill C-9. It is another censorship bill. It's a thought crime bill. It hands the government powerful new tools to decide what the courts will consider as hate speech. So it lowers the bar for hatred. It removes key safeguards and creates vague new crimes that can be stretched to silence dissent. So that's what Bill C-9 does. It creates a new vague definition of hatred, and it replaces extreme detestation with just detestation or vilification. These are very vague terms that could be used to describe almost anything. And again, for people who are like, oh, no, that's not the case. That's exactly what's in the bill.
Like, there is an active attempt to completely manipulate and propagandize our population. And I know that that sounds really intense. Prove me wrong then. I could even give you a hint. Go through the publicly available data that shows us exactly which types of projects, like research projects and classes and things like that in universities, as an example, are getting approved for funding right now. Tell me which ones they are, who they're backed by, what they aim to do and encourage, and get back to me once you're done doing all of that. And just let me know if it sounds super crazy, or if that's too much work for you. Just like go through our publicly funded mainstream media and tell me every single time that something has happened within the Liberal cabinet that's very similar, at times more egregious than the Conservative cabinet, and just tell me how it's reported on and what they say about it. Just that's easy enough to do. Actually, I have dozens of episodes about exactly that and doing that comparison, but I might just be super off my rocker here. I don't know. I'm picking at a pattern that doesn't exist.
The second thing that it does is it removes the Attorney General's consent so that police can charge you directly with no higher level filter. And it opens the door, frankly, and my concern is that it opens the door for politically motivated arrests. They've announced that the one or two safeguards that were in here, they want to remove them so that it'll be easier to criminalize religious thought.
Did you know, by the way, that there is already no religious defense for things like advocating genocide? which is crazy if you take a look at what Canada looked like over the last couple of years. Same with public incitement to violence. Yeah, that's covered under Section 318 and 319.
To remove religious exemptions from the hate speech laws to pass Bill C-9. You're the chair of the Justice Committee.
Right.
Is that happening?
Well, I had to question myself. Look, I'm a person of faith. I'm Christian. I have very, very deep beliefs. The reality is I don't think people should be using the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah to escape from committing a hate crime or claim that the hate, what would otherwise be a hate crime, is done in the name of a religious text. You can look at the religious texts yourself and see what they mean, but the reality is that there is an exception in the criminal code that are making people hesitate. And when the conservatives come out and pretend that they are defending freedom of expression, they are defending people like Adel Shakari.
Microplastics are infiltrating every part of our lives. Scientists estimate that we now consume a credit card's worth of plastic every single week through our food, water, and even the air that we breathe. One study found plastic particles in 100% of human lung samples. And even if you eat clean or avoid packaged foods, you're still being exposed. You can't opt out. And these plastics don't just sit in your body, they cross the gut lining, leach into your blood, and disrupt everything. They've been shown to alter gut bacteria, suppress your immune response, and increase your risk for neurodegenerative disease, metabolic disorders, and cancers. Some plastic toxins like BPA and phthalates mimic hormones. They interfere with fertility and damage DNA. But your gut can help you fight back. Kimchi 1 from Brightcore Nutrition is a potent ally in this toxic world. Packed with over 900 probiotic strains unique to kimchi and proven to break down BPA. It doesn't just support digestion, it helps protect your cells, your brain, your hormones, and your future. Today, you can get 25% off by clicking the link in the description of this video with the code Jasmine. Or, for an even better deal, call my friends at Brightcore for up to 50% off your order and free shipping. Give them a call now at 888-733-9420.
I think it is it's intellectually contradictory. I think if you are a person of faith, it is contradictory to suggest that you can commit a hate crime in the name of a religious text, whether it's the Quran, Torah.
But Christian Muslim stakeholders are already saying this would be attack on freedom of religion. So I mean, how could the government be on side with this, hearing some of the concerns already voiced from stakeholders?
I would respectfully disagree, and I think if you talk to people of faith and even religious leaders, they would see that this is really something that makes sense.
The hypocrisy here is just something, and it's insane to witness the justification of, well, Christians would agree, and I'm a Christian, that, you shouldn't be allowed to commit a hate crime. There shouldn't be an exemption for a hate crime if it's based on your religious text. Yeah, that's why there's already laws for that. You just don't enforce them because the groups of people who are committing such offenses are not the ones of which you are referencing. Actually, they're ones that are not as politically correct, that you don't actually want to enforce, because this exact same government has repeatedly failed to charge actual extremists, failed to do background checks on individuals coming from some pretty sketchy parts of the world with some pretty violent historic, cultural, and religious differences, but it's fine. No, they're fine. They can come in as a refugee, fill out this app, and yeah, you're in. There you go, baby. They've also failed to protect religious communities from actual violence, and most importantly, they have failed to enforce existing hate speech laws, because all of the people that are causing these problems are not the law-abiding God, country, family Christians of whom he is referring to here. And about 97% of the time, the individuals who are creating all of this chaos and danger and feelings of unsafety in our communities are here on federally funded refugee status, where they get more benefits than the average Canadian citizen does. They're here collecting their welfare checks while they're plotting our demise. And they're here from nations that have zero compatibility with Western values. In fact, they seek to destroy Western values because they think that they're evil. And they haven't been vetted at all to see if they'd be a good fit in the country. But doing anything about those individuals is not very politically correct. So we're going to waste all this time and money with this new amendment to this legislation, only to have the exact same laws we currently have a little bit more vagueness, a little bit more risk for dissenting voices, because we have seen historically in this country under the liberal rule that is exactly how these laws actually get enforced. It's not ever for the people who are in our communities creating harm and spreading hate. No. It's usually for the people who are actively participating in democracy and doing what is their moral obligation when they feel as though there is an injustice and the government whom they pay and elect is failing them. When they start to get fed up and they start to talk about it, that's almost always who gets met with the steepest of punishments in this country.
And also we are tightening rules in other areas.
The honorable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you can't build homes if you run out of the House. Right. And that's what the Prime Minister is doing right now.
I saw that clip going viral of Mark Carney, and it was in the middle of question period debate between Carney and Poilievre. They were talking about housing in particular, and how Jason Jacks, who is the parliamentary budget officer, has said that Build Canada Homes is definitely not what the government is promising. We are going to get to why it was that Mark Carney had to leave, but first, here's Pierre Poilievre.
The parliamentary budget officer. Build Canada Homes, the Prime Minister's program, is presented as part of the government's efforts to double the pace of housing construction over the next decade. That said, the government has not yet laid out an overall plan to achieve this goal. We anticipate that the contribution of Build Canada Homes will likely be modest, and estimate that the program will add about 26,000 units over 5 years, representing 2.1% increase in housing completions, not the 100% increase the Prime Minister promised. Was this just another bait and switch?
Now, what we're being told for why Mark Carney abruptly left in the middle of a very important conversation is because he had to go to his meeting with First Nations. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. The First Nations meeting was hours after that question period was over. Did he have some preparations to do? Maybe. I don't know. But it doesn't look like his meeting with them went too well. I mean, for starters, here is him very actively ignoring somebody's question.
What specific structural change will your government commit to? Whether it's a distinctions-based fiscal agreement for Mi'kmaq jurisdiction, a rights recognition secretariat with real decision-making authority, or a treaty-grounded revenue share model to ensure Innu nations in Nova Scotia can govern with the full authority of our treaty rights, which are already affirmed.
I'd love to know the backstory on this one.
Again, I believe this shows the importance to our Prime Minister. Chief Jacko. There we are. And again, I think this highlights the need maybe for a longer presence next time. Chief Jacko, please. Chief Jacko, please. We understand.
It's interesting how they mentioned it'd be great if we could have more time, given the fact that Mark Carney left question period early to go there, allegedly. And this seems to be this recurring pattern at these meetings as well. This happened with Justin Trudeau too, where they're like, what, like, we have no time to really get through anything here, and then you're off again, like you don't actually care.
When you actually look at the text of the MOU as it relates to Indigenous peoples, it says Alberta and Canada recognize their obligations to consult with and, where appropriate, accommodate Indigenous peoples. And then you have someone like Liberal MP Tlaib Noor Mohammed, you might have seen this, who was tweeting recently saying that any project that goes through the Major Projects Office must have BC and First Nations consent. So, I mean, there's a difference between what's in the actual legal agreement that the Prime Minister signed with the Premier and what some of the Liberals are saying on social media and to cameras on Parliament Hill.
You mean there's spin going on, JP? No, really?
I'm shocked. I'm clutching my pearls.
Horribly shocked. I would say that here's my observation. First of all, they could take the advice of Supriya, which I think is really good advice. Secondly, in the past, we've gotten from the Liberal government a lot of, I would say, more comms heavy kind of announcements where they were trying to put forward a project based upon communications, but really didn't have the deal to back it up. This time they've got hard paper. They got a transaction in the form of an MOU. And as a result, they are kind of on the back foot of communicating what it is. All this to say, it leaves a vacuum of other people interpreting or maybe trying to say what they hope it is. But what will matter is how does it get implemented? And that isn't going to get tested until there's an actual deal on the table. So until then, we're all just kind of wondering what could possibly happen and watching other people's reactions to it. But there will be a time that this will be tested. And I'm hoping that all the parties that are involved are going to see that the outcome that we need to get is a way to, in order to grow revenues in this country, because the threat we have to our economy is real and it's pressuring and it's here.
Cheryl?
But remember, everybody, every single one of our problems has nothing to do with us. No. We got, really awesome people like Raffi reminding us of that and indoctrinating our children with it. It all has to do with Mr. Trump. Ooh, except it doesn't.
Domtar is pointing to market conditions for the closure. In a statement, it says the poor price of pulp and a lack of access to affordable fiber are the reasons for the coming closure.
And this is our biggest single taxpayer, one of the biggest employers, not just in North Cowichan, but the broader Cowichan region. And we're talking 350, good-paying union jobs, and these are people with families, mortgages, and to get news like this is tough any time of the year, but especially right before Christmas.
I really don't think that Canada has the luxury any longer of pretending that everything is fine and that everything that's not fine is because of Donald Trump.
The BC Pulp and Paper Coalition says a lack of fiber is a made-in-BC problem, arguing the decision to close the mill is not tied to U.S. trade tariffs.
You will hear people say tariffs. It is approximately 0%. And I'll go on record and I'll debate that with anybody. It's 0% due to tariffs. And the reason why I say that is, let's take the Crofton Pulp and Paper Mill. Tiny percentage of what they make goes into the USA.
That was echoed by the BC Conservatives.
Says tariffs aren't the issue. That's all we've been hearing in the House. It's Trump's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's not Trump's fault. It's this government's fault, not being able to have access to enough fiber, not having cost certainty, and not being able to make sure that they're able to have enough opportunities to be able to continue to work.
Domtar says the mill will permanently close on December 15th, having existed in some form in the community since 1956.
While, of course, this is devastating news, same with Algoma Steel, and that one just keeps getting darker and darker the more you dive into it. We are going to touch on that more tomorrow as well, because there's some new information, some new interviews coming out that are pretty alarming. I wanted to touch on that today, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to push it to tomorrow. But ultimately, you can't keep blaming a different country for your own country's failure to remain competitive, competent, and to diversify your trade, right? That's what everybody's talking about. Yeah, well, it's funny. You can talk a lot, you can say a lot of things, but just because you repeat them doesn't make them true. I'm Jasmine Lane. Subscribe, like, follow, and comment your thoughts down below. Share this video. And I will kind of close out with this. As devastating as all of this news is, and I really do believe that the dominoes are only now starting to fall, I do have a lot of hope. There's going to be struggle. It's not going to be easy. But in the battle of good and evil, good always wins. It always wins. It just takes a little bit longer because it doesn't lie the same way that evil does in order to make it look like it has an advantage when it actually doesn't in the long game.